Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be covering governance and more specifically, three type of custom policies that can be uploaded and then utilized within governance configurations applied to teams and used to manage infrastructure as code at scale created through the StackGen platform. So the first thing we're going to cover is custom policies. Also, they'll be called security rules in different parts of this. And they are sort of an offshoot of the built-in policies that we manage ourselves, but users are allowed to create and upload and then utilize to handle their own security needs. Next, we are going to cover custom IAM policies, also known as AWS IAM permissions, as well as resource restrictions, which can utilize custom IAM policies. And lastly, we're going to show how those can be bundled up with governance configurations assigned to teams and what the end effect is on infrastructure you're creating and how you can utilize that to add controls for what people can create within the environment that we can push out for a wider audience. So to start off, I want to touch on custom policies, and we're going to go through custom policies over here, all the different items that are a part of it, what they mean. But just to back up a little bit, what are these custom policies or security rules? They are a custom version of the built-in security policies that you already see within the platform. When you go to create an app stack, you select some AWS architecture. From there, you see all the custom policies that will be or all the built-in policies that will be applied. This is a way to upload your own custom version of those. So to start off, I want to break down this big object into its separate line items and explain what each one of those is, the importance behind it, what you need to focus on, and how you can go about creating your own. So the very first thing is rule ID. So this is required and it must be globally unique, right? So you cannot copy over any of what the rule IDs for our built-in policies are. It has to be separate in its own for every single different security rule or custom policy that you're uploading. Next is name. This is just descriptive, let you know what the custom policy is doing. And this is useful because when you go to create governance configurations and you're going to assign custom policies to it, this is what you're going to see, right? So you're going to want to have this be something that lets you know what the policy is, gives you a hint for it. Next is version. You can ignore this. It's not required. I just leave it as 0.0.1 for anything that you're creating. Versioning may come in the future. The next actual important thing here is resource type. So resource type falls back to the underlying templates that we have for all of the StackGen resources that you can see in the drag and drop. And there's the best way to see what resources are available is via the CLI. So in here, you're going to go in with the CLI, StackGen, you can do StackGen resource list, and it defaults to showing you all of the AWS provider resource types, but there are things that you can select from here. So any of these would be valid to put into resource type. Make sure that you match it up with provider as AWS. But you can also, sh works after any of our commands. So if you're ever curious when you run into a command what it can do, always try out -h afterwards. You can see other providers by doing -p and, for instance, GCP. You'll see all of these different GCP resources here that we support. So that's what resource type is. Pick the resource that you want to have a custom security rule around, put it in there. Next is description. This is another one. Be big, be really explicit about what this rule is supposed to do. It's going to help you in the future when you've created it So be able to dive, okay, what was that exact thing I did? In our current iteration for these, there's not a way to figure out the rule associated with it once you've uploaded it. It'll be applied and you'll see how that rule is applied, but this part isn't retrievable from the API right now. So make sure you have a good description there. Next is benchmarks. Benchmarks, you see those most commonly when you're going to create an app stack and you're looking at those custom policies. Those benchmarks are all selected. It doesn't really matter for custom policies because custom policies are only ever applied via governance configurations. So you can include benchmarks that are associated with this if it is part of something, but that custom policy is not automatically going to be included if you don't have a governance configuration that's applied to the app stack. Next, you have category, and this is where one of those places where, and I guess for benchmarks too, the place this is listed is deep in the code, right? So you can see all the different benchmarks you can use here. These are your valid values. Same thing goes for category. So up in the category, you can see these are the valid areas for the categories. You'll have to look those up and select from what you want from there. It's not super important what category it goes into. It's more for sorting after the fact. So I have this one as data protection, and the last is severity. It comes in high, medium, low. Once again, I have a link here to where that's defined within the policy schema, and I'll be including these files with the demo, so you can always go back, look at them, have the links handy for yourself. Now, the interesting part about the custom policies comes in the rules. This is where the bread and butter happens. And first thing we're going to look into is conditions. So the way that our custom security policies work and our built-in security policies is all of our templates have inputs, and those inputs can be validated against conditions. So we have these conditions under attribute. You have name, bucket name comes out of, for AWS S3, it's these variables. So you would select bucket name. Now you can also find it from the attributes from the API and throw this into like a JSON prefier, but you'll see underneath here, we have options. You see bucket name here under the attributes. So attributes, it's looking for this key right here for you to use under this name. Then default, this will, whatever that attribute is, the default value given here will automatically populate for the resource that you've defined, AWS 3, when you drag and drop it. And I'll show you what that looks like. Regularly, when you drop an S3 bucket, it has an empty name. You get that alert that says, hey, S3 bucket name can't be empty, please fill it out. This won't have that because this default's set within this custom security policy. And then you also have data type. So what is the data type of this variable that you're putting in there? For this, it's string. Now you have your attribute, you have your operator that's going to perform the check that you have against it. And the valid operator values here, linked here. Some of them don't really work with string. Some are meant, you can see, for objects. So my example is with a string and with contains. If you run into something, a problem that you're trying to have, and you can't follow it from what you can find within these schemas, reach out to the StackGen team and we can help you for whatever you're trying to accomplish. And ideally, we'll, as part of helping you, that'll be through beefing up our documentation that you have, so we have a more self-enablement model that you can follow. But for this example, I want to make sure that any S3 bucket name contains the value org ID -12345. And that's captured through this conditional statement, operator contains org ID 12345. As you can see, this is a list, so you can have multiple conditions that you add in there. Now, associated with this is also remediation. This is going to be the help text that pops up if this rule has been broken. This will pop up and tell you, hey, this is what you need to do in order to fix the rule. So make sure this description gives a user or somebody that may not be familiar with infrastructure enough information for what they need to change. And for here, super straightforward. Value of the bucket name must contain org ID 12345. Please include the string somewhere in the name. So this is what that custom policy looks like. When I go to upload that custom policy, I'm doing it against a file. This is the file that I've already uploaded. And this is the command to do it. StackGen upload security rules -p, and then the path to the file that you're looking to upload. Super straightforward. Don't want to go through it now because Draw ran the demo a couple times and it's easier to show you what I've done. So let's hop in here and look at what does it look like when you have those security rules. And quick step back, I mentioned before that these security rules don't get applied except for when a governance configuration has been applied to a team. So what does that look like? So in here we have a governance configuration. I'm in my personal workspace. I am an admin or DevOps on this, which means I get to work on the tenant level governance configurations. And then we see this governance configuration that I've created, and I'm just digging in here to show you what these custom policies are. So this is a resource security policy. And you can see here that same bucket name that we had and description. Like I said, you're not seeing what the rule is, so make sure your description captures what's being checked within this. Hopefully something that we will improve within the API to be able to show some of that information in the future. So now we see that governance configuration. I can see the team that it is assigned to, demo squared. So let's go ahead and switch over to that team. Check out our app stacks. And I see I have this app stack here already. It's got this S3 bucket that's already named. But to show you some of the side things that I talked about, let's go ahead and drop in a new S3 bucket. So we have our new S3 bucket sitting here. You see this name's already been defaulted, but the security rule is this org actually doing the right thing? So I'm going to try to name it a different org, 54321, and I'm going to save that. And you can save it successfully, but we're now going to see this warning pop up, and you're going to see that the export's been disabled. And you can see this is the error that has popped up. Ensure that S3 bucket name, it gives me all that information. And under remediation, I can see value for the S3 bucket name must contain this. Okay, let's go ahead and fix it. Save that, and boom, export button's back. I have my good bucket name that now matches the rule set that I've applied to it. And any app stack that's being created within this demo squared group that I'm in is going to have these same rules applied. So this could be X3 example, which is the name of my app stack that I have for this one. And it's, I think, a common way that people would maybe want to apply security rules across all users within a team. Okay, now that we have touched on that, we're going to hop into our next one, which is custom IAM policies. So custom IAM policies is exactly what it sounds like. It is, we have our built-in IAM policies. Those built-in policies are reader, writer, admin, and custom, but we also give people an option to upload their own custom IAM policies. So this name has to be unique again, and it's not allowed to override with any of the other ones we have already built in for our resources, reader, writer, admin, or custom. And that resource type you're going to be getting from the same endpoint that we got resource types from before as well. So there's you can use the StackGen CLI to pull that information, StackGen resource type. So now you have a description about what it is, and then you have policy. Now this is just AWS raw, right? AWS policy. There's nothing different here from what they do. I have a link that I've included in here. I call this my AWS Bible because it has all the different things. But in here, you can see all the different actions that could be used and limited against for those permissions. So a really simple one here. There's two different things I wanted to give examples of how you could do for custom IAM policies. One is you can do hard-coded strings, and this will respect that hard-coded string. It won't change. This gives sort of carte blanche permissions for any S3 action for org ID 12345. Maybe they have S3 bucks they want to share. Maybe there's something weird about how they want to do things. I don't think this is a super regular use case for how we would like people to go about for doing IAM permissions, because it's a little bit wider than just an S3 bucket. They may be created within the same topology, but I wanted to show that it is available. Now, the other way that you can do it, and this example is pulled straight from the CLI. So if we check out this help text, this is just pulled directly from here. This right here is specific. It has to match exactly for ARN. We can see this dynamic one here where it's picking out the specific output from the S3 resource for ARN, and it will inject that within the policy. And I'll show you what that looks like compared with the hard-coded string when I go for the examples. So those are sort of the two. I have uploaded both of them ahead of time. The upload is pretty simple, just like the other one. You have a raw file, you point to StackGen upload AWS IAM permissions, what that raw file is. So now that we have these custom IAM roles generated, how do we use these custom IAM roles that we've generated to do some enforcement with governance? Our tool for doing that is resource IAM restriction policies. You have a description to let you know what it is when people are selecting from it in governance creation flow. You have a name sort of for the same reason. These have to be unique for any of the custom IAM resource restrictions that were uploaded. From there, you have specific allowed roles. This right here is the resource type, same thing that you see in some of the other ones. And the allowed roles are what is going to be able to be selectable when you're looking at that IAM connection that's created between your compute and the resource that it's trying to use. So like connecting Lambda to S3, which is what I'm going to show you in the example. And from there, you can have a default role, which gives you what will automatically be selected. Now, be careful that these are correct and match the custom IAM policies that you've uploaded, because there's not a physical check making sure it's correct on the upload. When I was going through the demo for the first time, I think I forgot to do the second one. I ran through the demo dry and I was like, why don't I see dynamic there? And it's because I hadn't uploaded it yet. Once I uploaded it, it showed up. So make sure you're getting this one correct and it matches the name that you've created for your custom resource, and that it's the same resource type for the one that you've uploaded. Okay, so when you have a custom IAM resource restriction, you can compose that of custom IAM policies that you've created. And then when you create a governance configuration, this is something you can select. So let's say you don't like our reader, writer, admin, and you want to make a custom policy that everybody has to use across the board whenever they're connecting compute with S3. This is your tool for doing it. You make your custom IAM policy. The allowed roles would only be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 CRUD custom dynamic, which would only allow people to perform, over here's probably better, these specific actions against S3. So what does that look like in practice? Let's hop over here. We're back in our S3 example for that governance configuration. And we see our compute right here is the Lambda in our S3 bucket. And in here we see our policy configuration, and you can see org 12345 CRUD dynamic selected, and the only other two that are selectable are the custom and reader. Now, the one nice thing about this is you can view this policy that's been created, and you can see here that it has automatically put in the link from this module to, or from S3 to that, and it's pulling the ARN out of it to create that IAM policy, versus that custom one that I showed you before, where it was just hard-coded to be this specific string. So both are capable. I think dynamic is probably the one that's going to be most used, because this is only giving you those specific permissions for this one bucket. But maybe you want to add another policy statement here so you're able to list bucket, and that goes for all of S3, right? Because if you want to be able to do AWS S3 list, you need to be able to have star for the account in order to do it. That's a pretty common use case. Awesome. And I guess only last thing, show the defaults for the topology. Add new resource. I'm gonna connect this guy over, let it know it's IAM. And from there, you can see the first one it falls to is that defaulted one. Okay, awesome. This is what we have. Please, please, please go out, use it, see what makes sense, see what works. Try different things. If things don't make sense, reach out to the team. We'll get better documentation. If there are things that you're looking for from any of these things that we've gone over, like for custom security policies, we have our operators, right? If there's operators you feel like are missing that we need, it's great to communicate to us. That's something that we can prioritize, and we can figure out, help you out, and make sure we're putting out a product that people want to use. Awesome. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.